My name is Karen Roberts Gardner, and I am the very proud daughter of my father, Hugh Roberts, who's here with us today and is the author of SoulScript, Journaling My Way to Self-Discovery and Love. I just wanted to tell you all briefly how this book came to be. For 30 plus years, my father and I didn't live in the same state. So when we finally ended up in New Mexico together in 2013, it was great to have birthdays together and holidays together, but I just felt like I was missing an opportunity to spend more time with my father. So one day on a whim, I said, "Dad, I want to document your life." And so we decided to meet every Tuesday, kind of like Tuesdays with Maury, and I started writing notes about his life. But it got to one point in his life when he told me, "I think you would understand better if I just read to you from my journals." So he pulled out his journals from the early 2000s and started reading, and I thought the content was so incredibly good, I said, "We have to write a book." And he says, "I'm not going to write a book." I said, no, it's already written. But of course, with the editing and everything, there was a lot of work to be done. But
2.5 years of it.
2.5 years of a project. But I'm so pleased that we had this chance to be together and that we've come up with this project and a finished product. You wanted to mention something, Dad?
I just wanted to let you folks know that without the encouragement that I got from Karen, this book would never have been created. But also, I have to acknowledge the efforts that my wife, Luann Asbury, has put into it. She's not able to be with us today, but she not only provided some of the background information in the initial part of the book, but read every page, commented, suggested, you know how it goes. So we had lots of discussions, some along the way, of what should be and shouldn't be in the book. So I'm acknowledging the help, the support, the encouragement of both my daughter and my wife.
Okay, so everyone here wants to know more about SoulScript. Please tell us about it.
SoulScript. This book chronicles a journey that I take, and I don't know whether I'm speaking to you or to Karen. She's asking me questions. This is kind of
to the audience.
It's okay?
Yes.
Because I'll be going like this all the time. This chronicles a journey that I take soon after losing my wife to cancer. It's a journey through time, when as a widower in my mid-70s, I struggle to answer the question, what am I going to do now?
The pages between the prologue and epilogue of this book are comprised almost entirely of journal entries, but there are two different types of journal entries, aren't there?
Yes, because the pages come from two different sources. They come from a daily journal and a weekly journal. Let me read from the preface of the daily journal and just give you an idea how this book came to be. On November 23rd, 2002, my wife died of cancer. We'd been together for 21 years. Her death came too soon. She was only 59. I was 74. 6 weeks after Patsy's death, the old year also died. A new year dawned, and I wondered what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I had to do something. But I knew enough to realize that I must first deal with my grief. I decided to do what I had done many times in the past when faced with a crisis or a turning point in my life. I picked up a new coil-bound notebook and I began to journal. And this is the book that began the story. I made a commitment to myself to sit down with my journal every morning, fresh cup of coffee at hand, and write. 5 months later, I joined a Healing Through Writing group. It's a support group for cancer patients and their caregivers. In weekly meetings, we were encouraged to, and I'm going to quote this, release on the page words drawn deep from within, allowing us to hear ourselves think with the voice of the soul. And each week I release my words onto the pages of this journal. Soon the group becomes known as the SoulScript group, from which my book takes its title. In the book, pages from both the weekly and the daily journal are interwoven chronologically.
Tell us what happens as this journaling practice continues.
My journey through grief becomes a journey of self-discovery. I find inspiration in writing poetry, in the lyrics of popular songs, and I find guidance in conversations with an inner voice that I call Spirit or God. And that leads to a deepening of my spirituality. And then, through a series of emails with a friend, I gain a companion on my journey. And SoulScript becomes not only a journal of self-discovery, but a remarkable love story.
Would you call SoulScript a spiritual memoir?
That is what I called it at first. But it's not really a memoir. As I was writing it, I wasn't writing it from memory. I was transcribing pages from my daily and weekly journals. The events, the thoughts, the feelings do come from 12 to 15 years earlier, but not from my memory, because they were written just when they were happening.
At the very beginning of SoulScript, you choose 2 books of daily readings for inspiration: Touchstones, a book of meditations for men, and Romancing the Ordinary, a Year of Simple Splendor by Sarah Ben-Bronick. How did these books help you?
Those 2 books become my companions for the first year after my wife's death. They jumpstart my day, always giving me something new to think about, and I record those thoughts in my daily journal. However, I must confess that Sarah Ben-Bronick, her daily entries in Romancing the Ordinary, have such an impact on me that I began referring her just personally as Sarah. She transcends her writing and becomes a character in my story. A week after Easter, that first year, I write this. I think it was my reading from Sarah Ben-Bronick this morning that set off my pleasant attack of nostalgia. Her story of how coincidences led her to buying her little cottage in England and living there happily made me somehow feel closer to her, almost as if I was falling in love with her. Her story seemed to reveal something personal, something intimate about her, with which I resonated. Her willingness to follow a chain of coincidences, whether they were intuition, God, fate, that seemed to lead her in a new and strange direction where eventually she found that she belonged. It was a bit like my being led to preach Easter morning last week and finding, well, I hope I will find that I belong in that community of faith.
You mentioned that you find guidance in conversations with God. How and when do those start?
Well, those conversations gradually evolve from simple prayers of gratitude and prayers for help. The first prayer of gratitude is very simple, page 17. God, the snow is beautiful as it falls. Thank you for such a blessing. And the next is a prayer for help on Easter Sunday morning when I, a retired United Methodist minister, have been invited to preach the Easter sermon, this is the high point of the year, at an Episcopal church that I'd been attending. And I write this: so why am I so hung up on performance? It occurs to me I'm afraid of getting old, or rather the effects of growing old can have on me. I notice that I don't sing as well as I used to. My voice seems weaker, my memory seems to be poorer. My perception of myself as aging while still remaining strong, vital, capable, and active is threatened. And if it turns out that I do not preach today as well as I used to, that'll confirm my fears. I feel I need to pray about all of this, and yet I also feel that my writing it out has been my prayer. I've laid it all out before you, God. I need to turn it all over to you. I'll do my best today. I know I'll get through it, and if I flop, fall on my face, I know that you'll be there to pick me up. And it will not be the end of the world. With your help, I will learn to deal with my losses as much as they will hurt. Obviously, those are not conversations. They're just me talking to God. But a couple of months later, I write, well, God, here it is Sunday, and I'll be missing worship again, but at least we can talk. How am I doing, God? And God replies. In the book, God's words are in italics. But somehow I just never learned how to speak in italics. So I'll be deepening my voice whenever God speaks. But let me read this first conversation. How am I doing, God? Don't you know? Well, I think I'm doing okay, but you know me, God. I'm never convinced that I'm an unbiased observer of myself. Yes, I know, we humans are never unbiased observers of anything, but we don't have to get into that head trip. I guess I'm still looking for approval, God, this time from you. I still want my father to say, you're a good boy, Shindy. That was his pet name for me. You are really doing well. Will I ever get over my need for his approval, which manifests itself as a need for external validation? Or is it the other way around? Was my innate need for external validation manifested in my need for my father's approval? I never thought of that possibility before. Is everyone born with a need for external approval? Is it buried somewhere in Maslow's hierarchy of needs so that I missed seeing it? Certainly you have created us with a capacity to love, perhaps even an innate need to love. Why? So that we can express your love for us to others. Is that need to love perhaps accompanied by a need to be loved? The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. I miss Patsy's love for me, but what of my love for you? It's hard for me to feel it, God. How can I experience it? Through the gifts that I have lavished on you. Look up from this page. Look around. Be aware. Are you not truly blessed with all you need and more? With beauty and light and comfort and life itself? Yes, God, I am grateful. So why do I not feel your love? Did you always or even often feel Patsy's love? No, but I always knew it was there. Well, okay, God, I think I get it. Thank you. Amen.
You say that you also find inspiration in the lyrics of popular songs and in writing poetry. So tell us a little more about that.
As a child in elementary school, I actually enjoyed learning and then reciting poems. Here's one I still remember. It's a warm wind, the west wind, full of birds' cries. I never feel the west wind, but tears are in my eyes. It comes from the westlands, the old brown hills, and Aprils in the west wind, and daffodils. And of course, since popular songs are essentially poems set to music, I enjoy hearing the poetry in their lyrics. So I find it difficult to speak separately about songs and poems. I do try at one point in the book to focus on music separately from poetry, but as you'll find, I fail in the attempt. This is one of the weekly SoulScript sessions. We were prompted to respond to the question, how does music affect you? And I write, what is it about music that draws me so strongly? It is the combination of notes and lyrics that I find so powerful. I'm often brought to tears when I hear a particular combination of eloquent poetry set to a haunting tune. Paul Simon's lyrics touch me deeply. For example, I am a rock, I am an island, and a rock feels no pain, and an island never cries. As do some of Neil Diamond's lyrics. I am, I cried. I am, said I. And I am lost, and I can't even say why. Why do those particular songs come to my mind as I write from the depths of my soul? Because they both focus on who I am. I am discovering myself. Of course, reading or singing someone else's poetry is one thing. Writing poetry is another. However, I do make a stab at it. 8 of my poems appear in the book. On the 10-month anniversary of my wife's death, my daily journal entry is about continuing grief and regrets. I become quite emotional. And I end the page with this. If I could write a song, the words would sing the melody of my regret. A blues song. A song of the pain of loss, lost chances, lost opportunities, lost hopes, lost dreams. The notes would sound out my grief, their echoes resounding through the universe to reach her in the place where spirits live, seeking her forgiveness, causing spirit tears to mist from her fleshless eyes as she recalls her earthly loss, what might have been had I the courage in life that she had in death. If I could write a song, suddenly I knew I'd written a poem. All I had to do was rewrite it in lines and stanzas and fill in the blanks. And the result is on the next page. If I could write a song, a tune so sweet, and yet the saxophones would moan regret, and words cry out my pain, she's gone, no chance to try again. I'd give the life I've yet to live if she could hear my song. Would she forgive? Would she forgive? If I could write a song, guitars would strum my sobs. the drum in punctuation throbs, and so the beat would fly throughout the vast and endless sky to reach her where all spirits live. If she could hear my song, would she forgive? Would she forgive? If I could write a song, would it evoke a mist of tears from where the eyes I kissed don't see? Would she reflect on what I'd led her to expect, the life we both had hoped to live? If she could hear my song, would she forgive? Would she forgive? If I could write a song, would words and tune convey how deep my sorrow is today, that she had to depart, not ever feeling in her heart the depth of love I failed to give? If she could hear my song, would she forgive? Would she forgive?
So obviously writing poetry was very healing for you at the time, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. For example, in the poem that I just read, I was expressing the grief that I was feeling. But more than that, I was pouring out my grief, actually ridding myself of it, or at least a part of it. I don't completely understand why poetry would be more effective than prose in doing that, but I believe that the freedom to use repetition, as I did, in poetry, it does increase the power of the writing.
One of the recurring themes in the book is relationships, and you write about your fear of relationships. Why are you afraid?
My fear is that if someone were to become a significant part of my life, I would lose some small part of my freedom, the freedom to act unilaterally without regard for anyone else's feelings. I fear that then their feelings will cause them to act in a way that will cause me pain. I never do completely lose my fear of involvement in new relationships, but my fear is overcome by falling in love again.
And what was that like, falling in love again at age 75?
Well, actually, there are two love stories in the book. One is a fantasy, my love affair with Sarah von Brannock. I referred to it earlier when I read to you that I felt like I was almost falling in love with her. I do write a love letter to her, signing it, "Your lover between the lines." Fortunately, Sarah never replies. That might have complicated the other love story anyway, the one that is far more important part of my book. However, I'm very reluctant to say anything about that love story because I want to arouse the curiosity of our friends out here to entice them to buy the book. But I will say this much, I don't fall in love. At first, I'm very reluctant to get involved. I'm still grieving the loss of my wife, but an existing friendship gradually deepens. Conversations become more personal. I become more open and trusting, and about 3 months later, I find myself in love again. But that's hardly a fall. It's more like a long slide. In fact, it was such a slow process that at the end of the first month, I look back and I write this. My role at first was simply to be open to her expression of friendship. Later, I began to respond as I became aware that I needed what she was offering, a relationship with someone whom I could trust in sharing my feelings, my struggle with building a new life. And now I'm starting to offer something in return that's more than an openness to her sharing her private thoughts, feelings, and history with me. She's teaching me how to be a friend, an intimate friend, without the complications of physical intimacy. Is this friendship leading to anything else? Who knows? Right now, I have no desire for it to become anything different from what it is, although I think I'm looking forward to its becoming more of the same. A relationship in which we share joys as well as the struggles of our lives and hearts, but share them experientially rather than conversationally. My invitation to her watch a comic video with me next Sunday afternoon is an effort to do that.
The subtitle of SoulScript is Journaling My Way to Self-Discovery and Love. You've talked about the love. Now tell us a little bit more about the self-discovery.
I mentioned a little while ago those songs that I was quoting were part of the self-discovery process. But you know, honestly, I didn't realize that until this morning when I was looking this over. It just hit me. They were all I ams, and that's self-discovery. But everything that I've read to you so far, except that one short piece about music, comes from my daily journals. But it's in my weekly journal that I'm encouraged, and I quote, to release on the page words drawn deep from within, allowing me to hear myself think with the voice of the soul. And it is that voice of the soul that leads me eventually to discover my authentic self. Now, I'd like to wrap up this interview by reading the love letter that I write to that authentic self that I discover. Dearest Hugh, my deep love for you has remained buried, lo these many years, beneath a heavy overburden of shame, self-doubt, and fear of narcissism. With God's help, I have now cleared away those layers of debris, uncovering, revealing, discovering the shining gold of affection, respect, admiration, and trust that I feel for you. I love you, Hugh. I love your physical strength and your emotional depth and tenderness. I love your desires for spiritual growth, for sensuality, for sexual gratification, for beauty, peace, for community and relationships. I love your longing to achieve, to accomplish, to make a contribution, to be of use, to help others, to heal creation. I love your love of song, of gardens, of cats and dogs, of words, of feelings. When your heart and soul reach out to me with such desire, I tremble on the brink and sometimes fall over the precipice into the flood of tears that almost drown me in desire for you. But I always emerge exhausted, washed clean in my love for you. I need to go now, my love, my friend, my eternal companion. I'm truly grateful that after so many decades, I have finally been able to confess my love for you, and that we will always be together. Signed, your soulmate, Hugh.
Wow. You know, I should mention that everything that my father wrote in his journals, especially the weekly journals, they were encouraged to put pen to paper and do not stop until the bell rings. So these journal entries are really what he wrote with no editing at all. So that's why I thought it was pretty incredible and why I encouraged him to write this book. So,
excuse me, I have to tell the folks also that as we were working on this together, I had to almost hold Karen down to keep her from wanting to change some of these things. And I pounded on the table and said, no, I don't want to change any words.
Yep, because they did really come from the journals. So I should have mentioned earlier, too, that my father received his PhD in biochemistry from Purdue University right around the time that I was born, and he also has a Master's of Divinity that he received in 91?
Yes.
91.
Duke Divinity School.
Mm-hmm. So I just did want to, I didn't say that at the beginning, and I wanted to give him some credibility here. So thank you, Dad, for sharing your very deeply personal journey with us.
It's been my pleasure to be with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.